Hey there. Tonight we are moving into a 40-room mansion on the Long Island shore in the summer of 1927 to find out what life was really like for the filthy rich of the Roaring Twenties. On paper, these were the luckiest human beings who had ever existed. People with more money than some countries, an ocean at the end of the lawn, and a man whose entire job was polishing the silver. And yet their days were governed by a rulebook so strange, so exhausting, and so occasionally illegal that by the end of tonight you may find yourself feeling gently sorry for millionaires, which is an emotion you should enjoy because it does not come around often. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment telling me where in the world you are listening from and what time it is there. Somehow, it is always 2 a.m. somewhere. Now, dim the lights. Put on a fan if you like that soft wash of white noise. Settle into your pillow and let the day drain out of your shoulders. They have earned it. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to be rich in the age of jazz? Who filled the swimming pool? And who fished the champagne bottles out of it the next morning? How did a country that banned alcohol produce the drunkest decade in its history? And why did the finest houses serve their whiskey in teacups? What does a woman do all day when she has 30 servants, 1 child she sees by appointment, and a husband whose love language is stock certificates? Could you survive a Long Island weekend party, 300 guests, 2 orchestras, and a neighbor who has hated your family since before your family had money? And the strangest question of all, if everyone at the party is rich, famous, and beautiful, why does nobody seem to be able to sit still? And now, congratulations. You have just woken up in 1927 in a bedroom the size of a tennis court, in a house called Windward on the Gold Coast of Long Island. You are the wife of one of the newest, shiniest fortunes in America. The morning sun is coming off the water. Somewhere below you, 12 fireplaces are being cleaned that nobody used, and in a kennel basket beside your bed, a small white Pekingese named Bonaparte is dreaming, as he always dreams, of biting a Vanderbilt. Your decade is waiting. Try to keep up. You wake to the sound of money. Not coins, nothing so vulgar. Money, in 1927, sounds like lawnmowers. Somewhere out on the 4 acres of grass between your window and the sea, 3 gardeners are pushing 3 mowers in slow, overlapping stripes, and that gentle mechanical purr, that sound of grass being disciplined at 7 a.m. by men you have never spoken to, is the true national anthem of your class. You lie still a moment in a bed built for a queen and shipped, at absurd expense, from a bankrupt chateau in France. Half the furniture in this house has a better pedigree than you do. That is rather the point of it. Your husband bought the bed, the tapestries, the suits of armour in the hall, and the library of leather books nobody has opened, all in one glorious decade of catching up, because when your money is new, you purchase old things the way a drowning man grabs rope. The bedroom around you is, there is no other word for it, enormous. Silk walls, the colour of sea glass. Windows from floor to ceiling, dressed in curtains that took 2 seamstresses a month. Through them, the morning is performing its usual miracle over Long Island Sound, the water going from grey to silver to a blue with actual money in it, and a single white sail already out there, some neighbour's son avoiding his father. And the light switch. Do not overlook the light switch. Your grandmother trimmed oil lamps. Your mother dressed by candlelight and considered gas modern. You touch a small pearl button and the room obeys. The house is electrified from cellar to attic. Hot water arrives without being carried. There are 14 telephones. And an elevator, a private elevator, panelled in walnut, that your daughter treats as a ride and your butler treats as a member of staff. You live, and this is not an exaggeration, in the most technologically advanced private residence category the human race has yet produced. It will all seem quaint in a century. This morning, it is science fiction with chintz. You stretch, and Bonaparte surfaces from his basket, shakes himself into order, and fixes you with the bulging, imperial stare of a dog who has never once been refused anything. Bonaparte cost more than a Ford motor car. Bonaparte has a wardrobe. Bonaparte was bitten by exactly one flea in 1925, and the gardener still speaks of the investigation in a lowered voice. From the lawn comes a new sound, the soft shriek of peacocks, because your husband saw peacocks at a rival's estate, and now you have peacocks. And no one, including the peacocks, is happy about it. Beyond them, faintly, the flag on the dock snaps in the sea breeze above the boathouse, where a mahogany speedboat named after you sits gleaming and almost never used. This is the Gold Coast, the 50-mile stretch of shoreline where America's new fortunes have built their castles. Nearly 600 estates shoulder to shoulder behind hedges and iron gates, palaces with golf courses, greenhouses, private landing strips, and one legendary neighbor with 127 rooms and a staff of 126, which means that somewhere on that property, at all times, one room is briefly, gloriously, unsupervised. You reach for the bell. Not a rope now, a button, mother of pearl, wired like everything else. One press, and in the kitchen wing a light will glow beside the word Madame, and the machine of your day, 30 servants strong, will begin to turn. You press it. Far away, deep in the house, the future starts walking toward you with a breakfast tray. Marcel arrives with the tray like a small, chic weather system. Marcel is your lady's maid. She is French. She is perhaps 5 feet tall, and she runs your appearance the way generals run campaigns, with maps, contingencies, and no patience whatsoever for civilian opinions. Hiring a French maid was not a luxury, it was a strategy. In your world, a maid from Paris outranks a maid from anywhere else the way a duchess outranks a dentist. And when the other wives learn where Marcel trained, which they did within a week, your stock rose in a way your husband genuinely respected. The tray is a still life of the new American morning. Coffee, black and serious, in place of the old world's chocolate. Half a grapefruit, chilled, sectioned, and sitting there like a small yellow accusation. Because this is the decade slimness conquered America, and every fashionable woman you know is on some regime of grapefruit, dry toast, and hope. There is cream and sugar on the tray too, naturally. The tray does not judge. The tray simply offers both futures and lets you choose each morning who you are going to be. And then, the real breakfast, the papers. Not the front pages. Nobody you know reads the front pages before noon. The columns. The tabloids have invented a new kind of journalism this decade. Breathless, italic, and entirely about people like you. Marcel has folded them to the correct pages because she reads them first, downstairs, which is how the staff always knows everything 2 hours before you do. You sip your coffee and descend into the day's intelligence. A Newport marriage is ending, and the column describes the wife as resting in Paris, which is the polite way of saying shopping angrily. A copper heiress wore emeralds the size of throat lozenges to a dinner in the city, and the columnist has practically proposed to her in print. A certain gentleman, and everyone knows exactly which gentleman, is said to entertain 300 guests every weekend at a house he may or may not fully own. And the column wonders, delicately, where the money comes from. Nobody knows. Everybody goes, and there, in the third column down, a line that makes you set your cup in its saucer with a small porcelain click. Guests expected this weekend at Windward, the Long Island seat of a certain new titan of the ticker, include a moving picture actress, a polo team, and, it is whispered, royalty. You had told the columnist no such thing. Miss Vance, your social secretary, had told the columnist exactly such a thing, because Miss Vance understands, as you are learning to, that in 1927 a party does not exist until it has been printed. Royalty, you say aloud to Bonaparte, who receives the news with the composure of a dog who considers himself the senior royal presence in the house. It is, in fact, a Balkan princeling Walter met at a card table, a young man with a magnificent uniform and no discernible country. But he photographs beautifully and eats almost nothing, which makes him, by the mathematics of the season, a perfect guest. Through the window, the sun has cleared the water. Down the corridor, you can hear the distant ring of one of the 14 telephones, then Miss Vance's voice, low and even, accepting somebody, declining somebody else, moving names across the chessboard of Saturday night. The decade is up. Time to dress for it. While Marcel draws your bath, take a moment, as you often do, to simply consider the house. Windward. 40 rooms, give or take, and the truth is even you are not entirely certain, because what counts as a room? Does the silver vault count? The flower room? The telephone room, which is a room for telephones? The house is 7 years old and pretending to be 400. That is the grand joke of the Gold Coast, and everyone is in on it. Your husband's money is so new it still has wet paint on it, and so the house was built old, a Tudor manor with Elizabethan chimneys and a Norman tower, designed by a fashionable architect who kept a straight face throughout. The stones of the terrace were imported from a genuine English abbey, dissolved by a genuine English family's genuine bankruptcy. The great oak staircase came out of a chateau. The library panelling crossed the Atlantic in a steamship hold, numbered plank by plank like a puzzle, and was reassembled here by Italian craftsmen while the previous owners, presumably, wept into their tea somewhere in the Loire. Europe, in short, is having a going out of business sale. And America is at the front of the queue with its hat off and its wallet out. Downstairs unrolls like a small civilization, a dining room that seats 50 under a ceiling copied from a Venetian palace. A ballroom with a sprung floor, waiting all week like an instrument for Saturday night. A morning room, a music room, a gun room your husband visits to hold guns and think, a conservatory dripping with orchids that have their own dedicated gardener, a fellow who speaks to them in Scottish. Below it all, the engine deck. Kitchens, pantries, cold rooms, a wine cellar we shall discuss later in this program, because it is technically not supposed to exist, and everywhere, the new nervous system. 14 telephones, some of them in colours. Electric refrigeration. So there is ice. Mountains of ice. Ice as a permanent fact rather than a winter harvest. A radio set in a carved cabinet, around which the whole household, above and below stairs, arranges itself on fight nights with the solemnity of church. There is a vacuum system built into the very walls, and an intercom the servants regard with theological suspicion. And in the garage wing, 6 motor cars sleeping nose to tail like expensive animals. Upstairs, the geography of family life. Your suite and Walter's suite, connected by a door whose diplomatic status varies with the week. Guest rooms by the dozen, each named and themed. The rose room, the ship room, the Chinese room, all kept permanently ready, beds aired, flowers fresh, as though visitors might wash ashore at any hour, which, on the Gold Coast, they do. And then the odd, telling corners that no architect drew but every great new house acquires. The trophy case of silver cups from horse shows and regattas, polished weekly, commemorating victories nobody remembers. The portrait of Walter's mother, painted from a photograph after her death, hanging in a place of honour and wearing an expression that suggests she finds the whole house ridiculous, which, having raised Walter over a hardware store in Ohio, she would, because that is the secret the Abbey stones are meant to muffle. This entire operation, the tower, the tapestries, the peacocks, is 1 generation deep. Walter's father sold nails, your father sold insurance, And now a footman whose family has served English earls for 2 centuries carries your coffee across a floor that once belonged to a doge, and if he finds the arrangement amusing, his face has signed no confession. The house knows. Houses always know. But it is a kind house, in its way, warm in winter, full of light, and honestly happier, you suspect, than the real Tudor manors ever were. Because whatever else is true of new money, it pays its bills, feeds its staff, and actually uses the swimming pool. From the bathroom, the sound of water stopping. Marcel appears in the doorway with a towel over her arm and the expression of a commander whose troops are assembled. The tour is over. The construction of Madame begins. Here is the morning miracle. And to feel it properly, you must remember what came before. Your mother, dressing for an ordinary day in 1897, wore a corset laced to the edge of breathing, 7 layers of underthings, a floor-length gown, and a hat anchored with steel pins, the whole enterprise taking most of an hour and 2 sets of hands. You are her daughter. And this morning, you will step into a silk slip, a straight little frock that ends, scandalously, gloriously, just below the knee, and a pair of T-strap shoes, and you will be entirely dressed in 11 minutes. 11. Your grandmother would faint. Your mother did, more or less, the first time she saw your knees in public, and had to be revived with sal volatile and a long weekend. The corset is dead. Long live the corset, because fashion never truly frees anyone, it just changes the rent. The new silhouette is a straight line from shoulder to hem, boyish, flat, columnar. And if nature has given you curves, as nature insists on doing, the smart shops will sell you a flattening bandeau and a rubber-reducing girdle, so that women who spent 30 years padding are now, with equal obedience, strapping themselves flat. The prison changed shape. The sentence continues. But it is, you must admit, a far more comfortable prison, one you can dance in, drive in, breathe in. Marcel presents the morning's candidates on the bed. A pale green day frock from Paris, dropped waist, pleats that move like water, a knitted 2-piece in cream, sporty. Chanel's Revolution. The astonishing idea that a rich woman might dress with the easy plainness of a poor one, provided the plainness costs a fortune. That is the joke of this decade's fashion, and everyone pays it happily. The most expensive dress you own is black, small, and looks, to an untrained eye, like nothing at all. To a trained eye, it looks like Paris. And there is no eye on the Gold Coast untrained. Then, the hair. Ah, the hair. 2 years ago, in an act of quiet insurrection that made the columns, you had it bobbed. 20 inches of chestnut. Grown since childhood. Brushed 100 strokes a night by a maid. Gone in 11 minutes in a chair in Manhattan while your mother said novenas. What remains is sleek, shingled at the neck, and pressed each morning into gleaming finger waves that Marcel sculpts with brilliantine and a comb, close to the skull, sharp as lacquer. Your mother still mourns. Your maid still smirks. You have never once regretted it. When you drive with the top down, the wind touches your actual neck, and it feels, every single time, like getting away with something. Then the face, and this is new too, newer than the hem. Your mother owned 1 pot of cold cream and would have denied it under oath. You sit at a mirrored table arrayed like a small pharmacy. Powder in a gilt compact, rouge in another, a lipstick in a bullet of gold, coal for the evenings, all of it applied openly, discussed openly, repaired openly at restaurant tables in front of God and the waiters. Paint, your grandmother called it, meaning actresses, meaning worse. Makeup, the magazines call it now, meaning everyone, meaning you. A cloche hat goes on last, pulled down to the eyebrows, so that you must lift your chin slightly to see the world. Which is, Marcel observes, no bad training for the world you are about to see. Pearls, the long rope, knotted once, hanging careless as string. They are worth more than the boathouse. The whole costume says, with great precision, exactly what it is designed to say. Modern, moneyed, unbothered, quick, 11 minutes. Your mother needed an hour to dress for a smaller life. You check the mirror, Bonaparte checks you, and the two of you proceed downstairs at the pace of the new century. Which is to say, briskly, toward a husband who has been up since 6, doing violence to the financial pages. You find Walter where you always find him before 9, in the study. In a cloud of cigar, smoke and optimism, standing over the stock ticker like a priest over a font. The ticker is a glass dome on a pedestal, and inside it a small brass mechanism chatters out an endless ribbon of tape, printing, letter by letter, the pulse of Wall Street. It is the loudest quiet sound in the house. Tick, tick, tick. Fortunes assembling themselves in a thin paper stream that coils into a basket. And your husband reads it the way other men read scripture, standing, lips moving slightly, entirely at peace. Walter is 44 years old, built like a door, and permanently, faintly delighted. The specific delight of a man who guessed right. He guessed right about radio. He guessed right about utilities, about motor shares, about a certain chemical concern nobody had heard of, and he has been guessing right so long now that the guessing has come to feel, to him and to everyone at his club, like a law of nature. The market goes up. It went up last year. It is going up this morning. It will go up forever. In 1927, there are men on Wall Street who will explain to you, with charts, that the old cycle of boom and bust has been abolished, that science and American management have solved it, the way they solved yellow fever and the 6-day work week. Everyone believes them, nearly everyone. Somewhere in the back of your head, a small voice occasionally clears its throat, the voice of an insurance man's daughter, and you have learned to offer it a mental biscuit and put it back to sleep. "Good morning, my dear," says Walter. Without looking up, "You are ravishing, we are rich, and Consolidated is up 3 points." He says some version of this every morning. It is, as marriages go, a warm one. Walter adores you with the uncomplicated fullness of a man whose life has exactly 3 loves: you, the ticker, and a golf handicap he lies about. And if his conversation is 40% stock quotations, well, you have friends whose husbands are 40% gin. The study around him is the one room the decorator lost. No French panelling here, no Doge's floor. A roll-top desk from the Ohio hardware store, scarred and ugly and utterly non-negotiable. A photograph of his mother. A framed first dollar. Actually framed, actually the first. And beside the ticker, the telephone with the direct line to his broker, a Mr. Feeney, whose voice you have heard through doors at every hour of the day and night, and who Walter trusts marginally more than the United States Mint. This morning there is also, spread across the desk, the architect's drawing for the new wing, because the house, it turns out, is not finished. Houses like this are never finished. A rival titan 2 coves over has built an indoor tennis court, and Walter has responded, as his class responds to everything, with blueprints. An indoor pool this time, Roman, with marble from an actual ruin, and heaven help us, gold taps. You look at the drawing. You look at your husband, lit up like Peggy on her birthday. There will be no stopping it. And honestly, you would not stop it if you could. Watching Walter spend money is like watching a retriever swim. It is simply the animal doing the thing it was made for, at last, after generations on dry land. He kisses your cheek, smelling of smoke and bay rum, announces that he is off to the city, Thursday board, Friday golf, back with the weekend guests. Try not to let the princeling steal the spoons. Then he has gone down the hall in a swirl of energy and cigar, pausing, you can hear it, to bellow something affectionate at Peggy, and the front door closes, and the great engine of the house settles back into your hands. The ticker chatters on in the empty study, printing money into its little basket. You stand a moment listening to it, this small, tireless, worshipped machine, and then you go to find Mr. Pemberton, because a palace does not run itself, whatever the palace thinks. Before we leave the study, let us do something vulgar, something no one in your set would ever do aloud, and count. Because the phrase filthy rich is easy to say and hard to feel, and the only way to feel it is arithmetic. Start with the men on the lawn. A gardener at Windward earns perhaps $25 a week. Good wages, country air, cottage included, and there are 11 of him. A housemaid, with room and board, perhaps 12 a week. A schoolteacher in the village makes about 27. A skilled man at the aircraft plant over in Farmingdale, 35 in a fat week. Keep those numbers in your hand, feel their weight. Honest weekly numbers that feed families. And now look around you. The beaded dress arriving from Paris this morning costs $500, which is to say the gardener's entire spring and summer swinging from a hanger. Mr. Pemberton, being irreplaceable, commands $5,000 a year plus his rooms, more than the village doctor. The rolls in the garage cost $13,000, 6 teachers working 6 years, parked nose to tail beside 5 of its friends. The yacht drinks a schoolteacher's monthly salary in fuel every time Walter takes her out to impress a syndicate. Saturday's party, all told, lanterns to lobsters to the quantities we do not write down, will burn through perhaps $8,000 in one June evening, which is a foreman's decade, danced away between 9 and dawn. And here is the part that would have stopped your grandmother's heart entirely. None of it makes a dent. Walter's fortune, on paper, this morning, after that agreeable little chatter of the ticker, stands somewhere north of $30 million, and the truthful answer to where exactly is that not even Walter knows before Thursday, because it grows by itself now, faster than it can be spent, an animal that feeds while you sleep. At 5%, doing absolutely nothing, the fortune produces $4,000 a day. The party costs 2 days of standing still. The rolls, 3. Your entire glittering household, staff and stables and Paris and peacocks, runs on perhaps a third of the interest, meaning the great beast is never even touched, only skimmed, and still it swells. This is the actual sensation of being filthy rich in 1927, and it is stranger than envy imagines. It is not the feeling of having money. It is the disappearance of the entire category. Somewhere in your first married year, the question, "What does it cost?" simply left your body, the way a healed bone stops aching, and was replaced by a new question, "Does one want it?" Which sounds like freedom and is, but is also, in ways that are hard to explain at luncheon, a small persistent vertigo. Things have prices the way the sea has a temperature. Technically, measurably, and with no bearing whatever on whether you swim. And yet, the insurance man's daughter keeps her ledgers anyway, checks the fishmonger's addition, knows to the dollar what the household spends, and Walter finds this hilarious and precious, his wife auditing the housekeeping of Versailles, and you let him laugh, because you know something he was born too lucky to learn. You have seen money be finite. You remember your father at the kitchen table in Hartford, moving numbers with a pencil until they agreed to become a winter coat. That memory is the one possession you own that Walter cannot buy a better copy of, and on this shore, in this decade, among these gorgeous sleepwalkers for whom the sea has always been warm, it is worth exactly what it costs. Everything. Nothing. Depends on the day the tide turns. But the tide is high this morning. The study smells of cigars and good fortune, and the ticker, tireless little priest, chatters on, adding. At 9:30 in the small sitting room you use as an office, the government of Windward convenes. Present yourself at the desk, Mr. Pemberton, the butler, standing with a leather folder and the posture of a lighthouse. Mrs. Kelly, the housekeeper, with her book of lists, and, new this decade and unimaginable in any other, Miss Vance, your social secretary, 26 years old, sharp as a letter opener, with a stenographer's pad and a telephone manner that could reroute rivers. Mr. Pemberton, let it be said, is the single most impressive object in the house, and the house contains a Rembrandt. He is English, he served an earl. When Walter's Fortune came in, an agency in New York, which does a brisk and delicate trade in exactly this, arranged his passage west the way one arranges the loan of a masterpiece, and his salary would make a college professor sit down. It is worth every cent, Mr. Pemberton does not merely run the household, he broadcasts, by his mere upright existence, that this establishment is correct. When old money dines here and sees him decant the claret, something in their faces surrenders a little. Walter calls him, privately, the best investment since radio stock. The agenda this morning is the agenda of a small principality. Staff first. 30 souls in the house, the garages, the gardens, the greenhouse, the boathouse. A footman has given notice, lured away by a Manhattan hotel, and Mr. Pemberton pronounces the word hotel the way clergy pronounce certain sins. One of the gardeners has asked leave for his daughter's wedding, granted. With a gift, you will choose yourself. The new kitchen maid is homesick, Mrs. Kelly reports, and Mrs. Riley the cook has taken her under a wing the size of a barn door, and the matter may be considered handled. Then provisioning, which at Windward operates on the scale of light industry, the weekend numbers, 14 staying in the house, perhaps 300 for Saturday night. Mrs. M and 14. Kelly reads the requisitions like a quartermaster before an offensive. 40 chickens, 60 pounds of lobster, off the boats at Freeport, ice in quarter tons, cream, eggs, strawberries from your own glasshouses, and a standing order with a Manhattan fruiterer for things with no business existing in June. The house consumes like an ocean liner, and like an ocean liner it must never, ever appear to be trying. Then the books. Yes, you keep them. It amuses Walter, who signs anything you put in front of him. But the insurance man's daughter checks every ledger line, and twice now has caught a supplier padding, and the household knows it, which is precisely why it does not happen a third time. A palace leaks money at every seam. That is its nature. But there is a difference between leaking and being milked, and the difference is a woman with a pencil who actually reads the column of figures. And then Miss Vance takes the floor, and the meeting changes key, because Miss Vance manages the invisible estate, the social one. The Saturday list stands at 280 confirmed, she reports, reading from her pad. The moving picture actress arrives Friday with a maid, a secretary, and, apparently, a monkey. A bed will be made for the monkey. 2 families have accepted who are not currently speaking to one another, and Miss Vance has already redrawn the dinner seating like a hostage negotiation. The princeling requires nothing but admiration, and Mrs. Van Rensselaer, from the old stone house across the cove, has sent her regrets, again, in a note of 2 lines on paper, so heavy it barely folds, and the temperature of the room drops slightly, and we shall get to her, I promise, after dark. Business concludes. Mr. Pemberton closes his folder with the sound of a vault accepting a deposit. Mrs. Kelly is already walking, already listing. Miss Vance is at the telephone before the door shuts, and you sit 1 moment longer at the desk, presiding over the machinery. Because here is the truth the columns never print. They call your kind idle rich. Idle. 300 guests, 30 staff, 1 monkey, and a feud older than the state of Ohio, all of it landing, every week, on this desk, next to a small dog who has opinions about the flower arrangements. You have run this house for 7 years. You could run a railroad. Several of the women you lunch with could run the treasury. The world will figure that out eventually, and in the meantime, the lobsters are ordered. At 11, the motor comes around. This is a sentence your grandmother could not have passed, and it is your favourite one of the day. The car is a Rolls-Royce Phantom, bottle green, long as a modest yacht, with headlamps like silver moons and a hood ornament that flies, wings back, ahead of everything you do. Collins, the chauffeur, stands beside the open rear door in grey livery, cap perfectly level. Having spent, you happen to know, 40 minutes this morning polishing coachwork that was already clean. Collins was a mechanic in the war, can strip the engine to its bones on a sheet of canvas, and drives the way other men play cello. And his single known vice is a running feud with the peacocks, who like to sit on the warm hood and cannot be court-martialed. You could drive yourself. That is the astonishing thing, the thing the whole decade keeps whispering. You can drive, rather well in fact, and there is a low-slung roadster in the garage that is nominally yours, and on certain afternoons you take it out alone, with your hat off and the throttle open and the sound flashing between the hedges, 20, 30, 40 miles an hour, a speed at which chaperones, corsets, and the 19th century simply cannot keep up. Some of the wives fly aeroplanes now. Truly, it is that kind of decade, but this morning is errands, and errands are ceremony. So you ride Bonaparte upright on the seat beside you like a small, annoyed admiral, down the long drive, through the iron gates with the W worked into them, and out into the lanes of the North Shore. The lanes themselves are a lesson in your world. High hedges, then gates, gates, then glimpses. A Norman tower here, a slice of Georgian brick there, half a mile of wall belonging to a copper king, the whole shoreline a museum of borrowed Europes, each estate pretending the others are not there. Between them, woods and horse farms, and then the village, white clapboard and church spire, existing in a careful, ancient-feeling symbiosis with the fortunes around it that is, like everything else here, about 15 years old. And the village waves. This is the part you have never quite gotten used to. The postmaster waves. The boys outside the garage wave. At the car, mostly. At Collins a bit. At you on principle. The grocer comes to his door. It is not civility, exactly, and it is not friendship, exactly. The estates are the tide that floats every boat in the harbour, the wages, the trades, the church roof, the fireman's new engine that Walter paid for outright after a card game, and everyone knows it. And so the waving carries the particular warmth of a town greeting its own weather. Good weather, for now. You wave back. You always wave back. Your mother-in-law, who carried her lunch to a cannery in Ohio for 11 years, would rise from her grave and box your ears if you ever once failed to wave back. The errands themselves are small and mostly symbolic, which is what makes them pleasant. The florist, to approve Saturday's delivery in person, because Mrs. Kelly could do it and the florist would survive, but your appearing in the shop for 4 minutes will feed the man standing for a month. The bookshop, for the new novel everyone is pretending to have finished, and a picture book for Peggy about aeroplanes. The chemist, where the druggist meets your eye with perfect blandness and hands across, along with the cold cream and the aspirin, a small wrapped bottle of prescription whiskey, doctor's orders, strictly medicinal, and the two of you perform the little play so smoothly now that neither of you smiles. And we shall talk about that bottle this afternoon. Then home, the long way, because you ask Collins for the shore road, and he says, "Very good, madam," in the tone of a man who would have suggested it himself. The top of the morning has come off the day. The Sound lies on your left, glittering like the market, and the great gates file past on your right, and Bonaparte props his front paws on the sill with his ears blown back, surveying the coastline of his empire, and for 6 unscheduled minutes, nobody in the world knows precisely where you are. It is the cheapest luxury you own, and the best. You return to find the front hall colonized. 3 steamer trunks stand open like altars, tissue paper is drifting across the marble in expensive weather, and a small, fierce woman in black is directing 2 assistants with the calm of a bomb disposal expert. Madame Renaud has come out from Manhattan, and Madame Renaud has brought Paris with her. This is how couture reaches the Gold Coast. It makes house calls. Twice a year, the great Paris houses show their collections, and sketches and cables cross the Atlantic. And then the trunks follow on the liners. First class, better insured than most passengers, and women like you receive fashion the way earlier centuries received ambassadors. Madame Renaud represents several houses, maintains a workroom of Belgian seamstresses on 57th Street, and has the complete measurements, tempers, and marital situations of every woman of consequence on the North Shore, filed behind a forehead that has never once perspired. The unpacking is pure theatre, and everyone plays their part. Out of the tissue, one by one, come the autumn models. A day ensemble in wool crepe the colour of pigeons. So plain and so perfect, it makes you slightly weak. An afternoon dress in printed silk. A coat with a fox collar into which a woman could withdraw entirely, like a very glamorous snail. And then the evening things, and even the footman carrying in the coffee slows his step. Because the evening things this season are beaded. And when Madame's assistant lifts the first one, the whole hall chimes. Thousands of glass beads on silk chiffon, sewn in Paris by hands that do nothing else. A dress that weighs 8 pounds, moves like poured water, and catches the light the way the sound does at 7 in the evening. The assistants hold it up, and it swings, hissing softly, scattering little coins of light across the marble, and Bonaparte, who has seen everything, sits down to watch. Then the fitting. Upstairs, in front of the long mirrors, you stand in the beaded column while Madame circles with pins in her mouth and physics in her eyes. Taking in a seam here, releasing one there, because a beaded dress must clear the knee exactly, swing exactly, weigh on the shoulders exactly. It is not a garment so much as a small chandelier you have agreed to become. The new dances are discussed, because the dress must survive them. Madame has strong views on the Charleston, all of them structural. And here is what your mother would find strangest, stranger than the hemline, how little of it there is. Her generation dressed in armour, layers and boning and trains. You will go to Saturday's party in a slip, 8 pounds of beads, silk stockings rolled at the knee, and a bandeau in your hair, and you will be considered, correctly, magnificently dressed. Fashion has traded architecture for engineering. The scaffolding is gone. What remains must be perfect, because there is nowhere left to hide, which is, when you think about it, the whole decade in a sentence. The business concludes as it always does. Madame names, figures, in francs, gently, the way one mentions weather in a far country. Miss Vance will handle the draft. The grey crepe, the printed silk, the fox coat, and the beaded dress, the silver one, and, after a pause you both understood from the start, the black one as well. The trunks close. The tissue settles. Madame Renaud departs for the next great house down the shore, carrying her portable Paris, and you stand at the window watching her car go. A woman in possession of a dress that chimes, thinking, not for the first time, that your grandmother made her own wedding gown by lamplight, and wondering what she would say. You suspect, actually, that she would ask to touch the beads. Everyone asks to touch the beads. Downstairs, the gong. Luncheon is not at home today. The club is expecting you. And the club, dear listener, is where the real news breaks. The country club sits on a rise above the water, white and long and pillared, looking like a courthouse that learned to relax. Motorcars glitter on the gravel in ranks. Inside, the dining porch is a sea of wicker and linen, ceiling fans turning slow, and the entire female establishment of the North Shore arranged at round tables in printed silk, drinking iced tea that is not entirely tea, and conducting, beneath the murmur, the true business of the coast. You lunch with the usual cabinet. Dotty, your cousin, 23, bobbed, beaded, and constitutionally incapable of a quiet entrance, who kisses you on both cheeks in the French style she picked up crossing on the Paris and has refused to put down. Mabel Prescott, banking, placid as a lake and misses nothing. And Kitty Vandermeer, oil by marriage, who knows everything on Long Island approximately 40 minutes before it happens and metabolizes it into conversation with the efficiency of a wire service. The menu is the summer standard: jellied consommé, lobster salad, tomatoes stuffed with crab meat, and a fruit ice. Light little dishes eaten by women in light little dresses, all of whom are on the diet, the one from the magazines, and all of whom will order the chocolate roof of the pastry cart anyway, because the diet, like Prohibition, is understood to be a noble idea rather than a daily practice. And the talk. Oh, the talk. It opens in the customary key. Children, tennis, the scandal of the new dance instructor, and then Kitty sets down her glass with a certain click, and the table leans in by a collective quarter-inch, and the wire service begins to hum. Item. The Whitfield marriage is over. Actually over this time. She has taken the children to Reno, and the table observes 2 seconds of silence, that is 1 part sympathy and 3 parts inventory, because everyone is now recalculating dinner tables for the autumn. Item. A certain gentleman lost $80,000 at cards on Saturday and paid it Monday with a smile, which means either the market has been very kind or the smile was the last asset he owns. Item. The actress arriving at your house Friday is bringing the monkey because the monkey, Kitty reports with the gravity of a coroner, has been written into her contract. The table receives this. Mabel, without looking up from her lobster, says that it will not be the worst-mannered guest the coast has entertained this season, and names no names, and 3 separate women touch their napkins to their mouths at once. And then, gently, the way the real items always arrive, the last one. Kitty lowers her voice into the register reserved for money and death. The Harriman's man, she says, has been let go, the greenhouse staff cut in half, and the yacht, the big one, quietly listed for sale in Boston where nobody would notice. Copper, someone murmurs. Overextended. Someone else. The table contemplates its iced tea. In the bright porch light, nobody says anything unkind, and nobody says anything true either. Because the truth, that a family can simply slip beneath the surface of this shining life and vanish, waves and all, is not a luncheon subject. The tide comes in, the tide goes out, says Mabel at last, comfortably, and orders the chocolate. And the conversation moves on with the smooth, self-sealing motion of water closing over a stone. You drive home past the golf course, where a foursome of husbands is arguing cheerfully in +4s, and you think about tides, and about the ticker chattering to itself in the empty study, and then Bonaparte sneezes at a passing pheasant and the thought, politely, excuses itself. At 3 o'clock, by standing appointment, you climb to the 3rd floor, to the bright corner kingdom where your daughter is being raised, mostly, it must be said, by other people. The nursery at Windward is a modern one, and modern is the operative religion. Where your own childhood nursery ran on porridge and Providence, Peggy's runs on schedules, sunlight, and science. There are charts. There is a scale. And a growth graph pinned beside the window, annotated weekly in nurse's decisive hand. There are approved toys of an educational character, a miniature typewriter, a construction set, a globe that lights from within, alongside the unapproved and far more beloved population of bears. The pediatrician motors out from Manhattan monthly, weighs, measures, pronounces, collects a fee that would stagger a bishop, and departs, leaving behind pamphlets on fresh air, vitamins, and the dangers of excessive kissing, which the 20s genuinely considered a medical question, and which nurse enforces, and you cheerfully violate the moment her back is turned. Nurse herself is Scottish, silver-haired, and runs the floor with the mild total authority of a woman who has raised other people's children for 40 years and buried every argument anyone ever made to her. Under her, a nursery maid. Alongside her, arriving at 9 each morning in a Ford, Mademoiselle, the French governess, because Peggy is 7 now and the acquisition of French has begun. French being to girls of your class what Latin is to boys. A cage lining for the mind, installed early. And here is Peggy, at the low table by the window, 7 years old, gap-toothed, sun-browned, despite nurses' hats, drawing, when you come in, a picture of an aeroplane. Not a princess, an aeroplane, with a lady in it, waving. That is the difference, right there, on one sheet of paper, between her century and your mother's. Peggy has been up in the air. Actually up once. Over the Sound with a barnstormer at a charity fair. Walter having said yes, before anyone could consult you, and she came down, changed, a small zealot of altitude, and now every drawn lady waves from a cockpit. The hour is yours, and you spend it on the floor, which nurse pretends not to see. Peggy narrates the aeroplane, then the news of her realm, the robin's nest in the crabapple, the ongoing diplomatic crisis with the gardener's boy, who claims to have caught a striped bass this long, a claim Peggy has investigated and found, her word, fishy. She reads to you, slowly, fiercely, from a primer, one finger under the words, and you sit very still because there is nothing on the ticker, nothing in Paris, nothing under the tissue paper downstairs. That is worth one syllable of this. You are, by the standards of your set, a doting mother, and by the standards of a farm wife, a visiting dignitary. 1 hour at 3, story time some evenings when the calendar allows, Sundays in the garden. The rest is nurse, mademoiselle, schedules, science. It is simply how it is done, how it has always been done in houses like this. And Peggy is loved and lively and brown as a berry, and yet, some evenings, dressing for another dinner, you hear her laughing 2 floors up at some joke of nurses you will never be told, and the sound goes into you sideways, thin and bright, like a splinter of glass you elect, every time, not to mention to anyone. At 4 nurse materializes, the drawing is signed by the artist and formally presented. Wet kisses are exchanged in defiance of pediatric science, and you descend the stairs slowly, holding an aeroplane with a waving lady in it, while behind you the kingdom returns to its charts. Late afternoon on the Gold Coast is given over to the great new industry of your class, and that industry is leisure. Understand, this is not rest. Nobody here rests. Leisure in 1927 is a discipline, a wardrobe, a schedule, and very nearly a profession, and it has annexed the entire coastline between 4 and 7. Consider the equipment your afternoon requires. There is the pool, white marble, filled from the Sound, filtered by machinery with its own small building, and attended by a man whose title nobody has settled, where Dottie and 2 friends are already installed on striped canvas chairs beneath striped canvas umbrellas. There are the tennis courts, grass, and clay both, because grass for guests and clay for people who mean it, where the pro from the club comes twice a week to correct your backhand, an arrangement that costs what the gardener earns and produces. You would be the first to say a much inferior harvest. There is the stable, the boathouse, the golf across the hedge, and at anchor beyond the float, riding white and patient, the yacht, which exists chiefly to be seen from and to be seen. Today it is the pool, and the pool is where the century shows its hand most plainly, because everyone around it is doing something their grandparents would have called mad. They are sunbathing, on purpose, for pleasure. For 30 centuries of civilization, a suntan meant fieldwork, meant poverty, and every lady who could afford a parasol stayed the color of the lilies. Then, almost overnight, mid-decade, the poles flipped. Paris did it, the Riviera did it, the fashionable young appeared brown as sailors and glowing with expensive health, and now pallor means offices and shops, and a tan means Augusts at places with beautiful names. And Dottie is at this moment basting herself with oil like a Sunday roast and calling it modern. The sun itself has been promoted. Same sun. New class, you swim your lengths. Because the magazines prescribe exercise now, the way they once prescribed rest. Slow, even laps in a black wool suit that would have gotten your mother arrested and strikes Dottie as matronly. And the water is cold and green gold and utterly indifferent to the decade, which is one of the reasons you love it. From the shallow end floats the gramophone's sound, a portable in a leather case, playing something with a clarinet in it, and the peacocks answer from the lawn in outrage, and somewhere across the hedge comes the pock of the neighbour's tennis, the metronome of the entire coast. Afterward you sit wrapped in toweling under an umbrella while Dottie holds court from her chair, sunglasses up in her hair, narrating the season. Dottie is your favourite study in The New Woman. She has a two-seater, she drives too fast. A cigarette holder she deploys like punctuation. 3 proposals she is keeping, her phrase, in the icebox, and a job. An actual job, 2 days a week, at a Manhattan magazine, writing captions, for which she is paid actual money that she does not need, and which her mother discusses in the tones otherwise reserved for tuberculosis. Dottie says the office is full of girls now, typing, flirting, being paid, and that it is the most fun on the island of Manhattan. You believe her. You are 7 years too married, and 1 child too settled to join her, and there are afternoons, toweling off in the sun of your own marble pool, when you would not swear which of you drew the better ticket. The light goes long and gold. The striped umbrellas throw stripes twice their length across the grass. From the house, faint but unmistakable, comes the chime of the front door, then Pemberton's tread, measured, unhurried, crossing the terrace toward you with something on a silver tray that is not, at this hour, the mail. 4 o'clock has come and gone, you realize. Which means, down at the service entrance, the afternoon's most illegal delivery has been made, and the evening is officially in production. At 5, because the afternoon is too fine to waste on land, the household migrates to the water, and tea is taken aboard the yacht, which is the Gold Coast's way of saying that even your afternoon beverage deserves a crew. She rides at her mooring beyond the float. 72 feet of white hull and varnished mahogany, brass taking the sun like small fires, and her name on the stern in gold leaf is your name, because Walter christened her for you the spring after Peggy was born, a gesture so enormous and so him that you cried on the dock in front of the entire boatyard. The launch ferries you out in 2 soft minutes, Dottie and the pool party included. Bonaparte, standing at the bow of the little boat like a masthead carved by a humorist, and Captain Anderson hands you aboard with the Norwegian gravity he brings to all transfers of civilians over water. Aboard, the afternoon reorganizes itself around teak and canvas, deck chairs under the awning aft. A table laid with the full apparatus, silver pot, thin sandwiches, a lemon cake of Mrs. Riley's that has made this crossing so many times it could navigate alone, and the steward moving through it all with the level tread of a man who has poured tea in a following sea and considers your sheltered cove barely damp. Below, should anyone ask, and no one needs to, there are staterooms in bird's-eye maple, a dining saloon, a galley, and a small cellar of the usual officially non-existent character, because maritime law and the 3-mile limit make a yacht the most legally interesting cocktail cabinet in America, a fact Walter's guests find endlessly, nudgingly funny, and Captain Anderson does not. Anderson takes her out under power, down the cove and along the shore, slow as a promenade, and the coast performs its late afternoon show for you from the water, which is the angle it was designed for. The great houses come down to the sea one after another through their lawns. Tudor, Norman, Georgian, each with its dock and its boathouse and its flag, the whole gold shoreline strung like scenery, and between them the green headlands, and above everything the enormous declarative summer sky. Other boats stand about the sound on the same errand, sail and steam, a regatta of idleness, and passing etiquette is observed with waves and dipped colours, the nautical version of the 15-minute call. Tea proceeds. Dotty, flat on the foredeck in her bathing costume against all convention and half of maritime law, declares that she intends to marry a sailor, any sailor, and is informed by the company that she would be bored by Tuesday, and concedes the point and asks for more cake. Peggy, brought out for the hour with nurse, stands at the wheel on a wooden box under the captain's supervision, steering, actually steering, 7 years old with her hands at 10 and 2 and her face absolutely incandescent, and Anderson watching her with the first full smile he has produced this season. The wake unrolls behind you, straight and white. You will remember this exact hour, you think. The way one sometimes knows in advance which afternoons are being filed permanently. The cake, the flags, your daughter conning a 72-foot yacht past the palaces of the Republic, with her nurse holding her hat. And there is the other thing the water gives you, the thing you never say at tea. Perspective. From half a mile out, the whole competitive glory of the shore goes quiet and small. The towers and the tennis courts and the feuds all flattening into one pretty painted line between the green land and the blue afternoon, and even windward, even your own beloved 40 rooms, is just a grey gabled shape among shapes, holding its breath until you return. The sea does to the Gold Coast what the columns can never manage. It sees it in proportion. Then the light begins to slant, and Anderson brings her head around for home, and the houses grow back to full size as you close the shore, resuming their weight, their staff, their Saturdays. The launch, the float, the lawn. Tea is over. The evening, that far larger vessel, is waiting at its mooring, and it is time, as Dotty announces through the last of the cake, to go and get beautiful. Let us now discuss the cellar that does not exist. Officially, Windward is as dry as the law of the land, because since 1920, by constitutional amendment, the manufacture and sale of intoxicating liquors is banned across these United States. That is the law. And here is what the law looks like from the Gold Coast. This afternoon, at 4, a very ordinary delivery truck with a fish company's name painted on the side came up the service drive, and 2 polite men carried into the basement, past the laundry, through a door disguised as a cabinet, several wooden cases stamped as table water. And Mr. Pemberton counted them, checked them against a ledger kept in his own hand, and paid in cash from an envelope that appears in no book of this household. And everyone said, "Good afternoon," and the truck drove away smelling faintly of the sea. Prohibition, you have come to understand, is not the absence of alcohol. It is a tax on it, collected by criminals. The wine cellar behind the false cabinet is, if anything, better stocked than it was in 1919, when Walter, along with every rich man in America who could read a calendar, spent the final legal months buying like a man provisioning an ark. Champagne in mineral water crates, Bordeaux behind the furnace, Scotch that came down from Canada in fast boats, and rum that came up from the islands to the rum fleet. The actual fleet of ships that sits anchored just past the 3-mile limit in international water, a floating liquor mall visible on clear days from fashionable beaches, waiting for the night speedboats. Your own boatman refers to certain coves along this shore with a studied blankness that is its own confession. Half the great boathouses on this coast have run cargo at 2 in the morning, and the other half are lying, and the genius of it, the pure American genius, is the paperwork. The chemist's bottle from this morning, remember? A doctor may lawfully prescribe whiskey. 1 pint per patient per 10 days, for whatever ails you. And it is remarkable, the epidemic of vague complaints that has swept the better neighborhoods, entire families stricken with conditions curable only by 12-year-old scotch. Your own physician writes the household's prescriptions with a fountain pen and a straight face and lists your ailment. You have seen the form as nerves. Walters says the same. Even Dottie has a diagnosis. The drugstores fill millions of these a year. Meanwhile, the churches order sacramental wine by the barrel, and the synagogues likewise, and congregations have never been so devout, and somewhere in Washington a man with a chart is announcing that America is drier than it has ever been. And in a sense, he is right, and in every other sense, there is a truck with a fish company's name on it. But the ledger, the envelope, and the fish truck also have a shadow side, and you know it, because everyone knows it. What comes into this house is the real thing. Off the boat, sealed, tested, paid for at a premium precisely because it will not kill anyone. Farther down the price list, the city drinks worse, much worse. The papers this very year are full of it. Liquor cut with wood alcohol, industrial spirits doctored in warehouses, hundreds dead in New York alone, ordinary people at ordinary bars holding the same glass you hold, without your protection money. It is the quiet arithmetic of the whole glittering decade. And it is why Pemberton, who poured wine lawfully for an earl for 20 years, handles the cases from the fish truck with a certain silent English distaste, correct in every motion, complicit in none of it, a professional serving out a posting in a country that has, in his private view, lost its mind on the subject. You sign nothing, see little, and know everything, which is the arrangement. Upstairs, the sun is on the terrace. Below your feet, behind a cabinet that is a door, France and Scotland and the islands sleep in their straw, waiting for Saturday, 300 guests, and the thirstiest dry country on the face of the earth. 5 o'clock, and the War Council for Saturday convenes on the terrace. Because a party of 300 is not hospitality, it is a military operation with a dress code, and windward is now 72 hours from hour. Miss Vance presides over the lists. Mr. Pemberton presides over the logistics. Mrs. Riley has sent up menus and an ultimatum about the ice cream, and you preside over all of it, with Bonaparte on the chair beside you, reviewing the seating plan for errors only he can see. Hear the scale of it, and remember, this is one Saturday, at one house, on one stretch of one American shore, 2 orchestras, a society dance band for the ballroom, and a jazz outfit from Harlem for the marquee, because a party now runs on 2 bloodstreams, and a hostess must feed both. A dance floor laid over the terrace flagstones, Japanese lanterns, 400 of them, strung down the lawn to the water by men who will spend all Friday on ladders. A marquee with a bar, which we shall call the refreshment pavilion in front of anyone official. Caterers up from the city to reinforce the kitchen. Hired footmen to reinforce Pemberton's own. A check room for wraps. A man for the motor cars whose only job is geometry. Fitting 200 automobiles onto meadow grass without feuds. Lobster, chickens, hams, aspics, a raw bar on ice like a glass mountain, strawberries by the flat, and Mrs. Riley's peach ice cream, which is the actual reason half the coast accepts, and champagne. The quantity is written nowhere. It exists, like the cellar, in the space between Pemberton's ledger and God. The guest list is its own art form, and Miss Vance is its miniaturist. Society proper, the sporting crowd, Walter's Wall Street men and their wives, the polo team entire, Dottie's young set who will arrive at 11 and dance until the birds start, a pair of English novelists. Somebody is passing around this summer, like a decanter, the actress, the monkey, the princeling. The mix is the point. Old parties were walls, meant to keep people out. The new parties are nets, meant to pull everything glittering in at once. And if a bootlegger's lawyer ends up sharing an ashtray with a bishop's daughter by the goldfish pond, that is not a scandal, that is the decade working as designed. There are, of course, the problems. There are always the problems, and they arrive in Miss Vance's level murmur. The two families not on speaking terms have both confirmed, so the buffet lines must flow like diverted rivers, never crossing. The polo captain cannot be seated near the actress for reasons the column half-printed in May. A senator's wife requires assurance there will be no photographs of the pavilion, while the actress's secretary requires assurance there will be many photographs of the actress. And both assurances will be given, and both will be kept, because Miss Vance has already assigned the photographer his angles like artillery. And the weather. The one guest who cannot be managed. Pemberton has consulted the barometer, the boatman, and his own knee, and pronounces Saturday fair with an evening breeze. And if Pemberton is wrong, there are 400 yards of canvas standing by in the stable block, and it has never once, in 7 years, come to the canvas. The council rises as the sun drops toward the trees, lists are folded, empires are signed, and you stand a moment at the balustrade looking down the lawn, at the men measuring for lanterns, at the water going to hammered gold, and you allow yourself the hostess's one private vanity, the vision of it finished. The lights strung and burning, the two musics rising and mixing over the grass, the shine and swirl of 300 people having the time of their lives on your land, on your watch. Monday the columns, Sunday the wreckage, Saturday the show. But that is days away. Tonight is its own production, smaller and faster, and its curtain is in 3 hours, in Manhattan, and you are still, professionally speaking, in costume from the pool. At 6, on the West Terrace, the household observes the day's most sacred and least legal ceremony. Cocktails. Understand what a cocktail is in 1927, because your grandfather would not have recognized the thing. In his day, gentlemen drank whiskey neat or wine at table, and the mixing of spirits was something done in waterfront saloons to disguise bad liquor. Then Prohibition made all liquor legally bad, and the cocktail, that waterfront trick, ascended overnight into the drawing room because gin that has spent its short life in a bathtub needs all the honey, citrus, and imagination it can get. The law, in banning drink, accidentally invented American drinking. The shaker did the rest. The shaker itself sits on the wicker table now, silver, shaped like a lighthouse. One of a family of vessels this decade has produced disguised as lamps, penguins, dumbbells, and golf bags, deniable at a glance, and Walter, home on the 6 to 10, jacket off, works it with the two-handed solemnity of a man conducting a small, localized thunderstorm. Walter mixing the evening cocktail is one of the fixed rites of the household. Pemberton could do it better. Pemberton has forgotten more about proportion than Walter will ever learn. But Pemberton is English and lawful, and it is understood between the two men, wordlessly, permanently, that the butler provides the ice and turns his back at the crucial moment, a compromise between his conscience and his employment that both parties regard as statesmanship. Tonight it is martinis, cold as the pole, and a sidecar for Dottie, who was motored over on the strength of a rumour about the princeling, and lemonade for Peggy, who is permitted 10 minutes of terrace society in her nightgown as the great treat of her day, and who clinks her glass against the grown-up ones with the gravity of a treaty signing. The first swallow goes down bright and cold and slightly wicked, which is the whole savour of the age, that little pilot light of law-breaking under every pleasant evening. Your mother took sherry twice a year, blushing. You drink contraband on a marble terrace, while a senator does the same 2 coves away. And the vast comedy of it, a country that outlawed exactly the thing its finest lawns are soaked in, has stopped even being remarked upon. It is simply the water you swim in now. Amusing only to foreigners and historians. The talk at cocktail hour is the day shaken and strained. Walter reports the market, up again. Naturally, and a rumour about a motor merger. and a man at the club who has bought an aeroplane and christened it after his mistress, an act of accounting Walter considers unsound. Dottie reports Manhattan. A new club below 52nd Street with a door within a door, of which more shortly, and the intelligence that the actress's monkey has bitten a columnist, elevating both careers. You report the home front, the lanterns, the lobsters, the feuding buffet lines, and Walter listens with the genuine admiring bafflement of a man who can move a market, but could not seat 40 people to dinner if his railroad depended on it. The sun comes down the sky. The sound goes to copper. Somewhere below, the peacocks make their evening complaint, and Bonaparte, on his own chair with his own cushion, watches the shaker with an optimism that 7 years of total failure have not dimmed. One drink. In this house it is one, perhaps two, because you have both seen, at other houses down this shore, what the decade does to those who mistake the pilot light for the furnace, the flushed faces at noon, the silver flasks at breakfast, the fortunes and marriages quietly dissolving in imported scotch. The age is drunk, but you do not have to be. A little wickedness, well iced, at 6, and then the evening, upright, on time, and dressed to devastate. Marcel is already waiting upstairs. The city, tonight, she says, is wearing silver, while Marcel builds you into your silver upstairs. Come down for a moment, through the baize door behind the great staircase, into the other windward, the one that runs this one, because 30 lives are having their own evening on the far side of that door, and no honest portrait of this house leaves them out. The servants' hall at 7 is at full steam. The long table is laid for the staff supper, robust, fragrant, entirely unlike the 7 jewelled courses being plated for the front of the house, and by iron tradition it is eaten in shifts around the evening's duties, with Mr. Pemberton at the head when he sits, which tonight, with Madame motoring to Manhattan, he briefly, magnificently, will. Down the table run the ranks and their geography. Footman and the visiting chauffeur talk motor cars at one end. The kitchen maids cluster near the door for fast exits. Marcel's chair stands empty until Madame is launched. And Mrs. Kelly and Mrs. Riley hold the middle like allied powers, trading provisioning intelligence in the shorthand of 20 years. Listen to the table for 2 minutes, and you will know more about this coast than any column. They know everything, of course. They knew about the Whitfield divorce a month before Reno did, because valets talk to valets and ladies' maids to ladies' maids, and the servants' halls of the Gold Coast are wired together tighter than the telephone company. They know which great house is quietly selling its wine, which gentleman's man is owed 3 months' wages, which chauffeur is courting which cook, and their information is better than the tabloids because their sources empty the wastebaskets. It is all discussed with a professional detachment the columns will never achieve. Because to the hall, the follies of the front of the house are weather. You do not gossip about weather. You forecast it. And this being America, and this being the 20s, the hall itself is changing under the old forms. The wages here are the best on the shore, Walter being Walter, and even so Mrs. Kelly is 2 housemaids short, because the daughters of the families who once sent girls into service by the dozen are going instead to the telephone exchanges, the shops, the offices, the 57th Street workrooms, anywhere with evenings off and no bells, and who, the hall agrees over its stew, entirely without bitterness, can blame them. The English staff regard this American servant problem as a symptom of a country raised without proper feudalism. The American staff regard it as the whole point of the country. Pemberton, presiding, permits the debate to the exact edge of warmth and no further, like a man banking a fire. There are, it should be said, pleasures on this side of the baize door that the front of the house never sees, and would frankly envy. The staff have the wireless in their hall, and dance nights when the family is away, gramophone on the table, footmen in shirt sleeves teaching kitchen maids the steps from the pictures. They have first crack at Mrs. Riley's experiments, and standing chairs in the kitchen garden. They have the servants' ball at Christmas, when Walter and you serve them at table, an inversion Walter performs with enormous comedy and complete sincerity, and they have, above all, the deep tribal satisfaction of a great house running right, the shine on the silver, the lanterns going up true, Saturday bearing down like a regatta they intend to win. At 7:30 the bellboard flickers. Madame's room. The car. The hall moves without seeming to hurry. Marcel is already on the stairs. A footman is at the door. Collins is bringing the rolls around, and Mr. Pemberton rises, buttons his coat, and passes through the baize door, out of his republic and into his performance, carrying the evening's first tray of glasses into the lamplight as though the house had run itself all along. 2 windwards, 1 door between them, each utterly convinced it could not be done without, and each, of course, correct. Upstairs, the evening build begins. And if the morning's dressing was 11 minutes of freedom, the evening's is 40 minutes of art, because tonight you are not dressing for comfort, you are dressing for effect. And effect, in this decade, is a precision instrument. The bath first, scented with something French that arrives in a bottle shaped like a temple. Then the foundations of the new silhouette, which is to say, almost none. A silk slip, pale as water, stockings of real silk rolled and gartered at the knee, because the hemlines dance and the stockings will be seen, and a woman is now judged, frankly and openly, on the quality of her knees. Your mother went to her grave without a single stranger ever confirming she had knees. You have danced yours across half the ballrooms of 2 counties. Progress arrives in strange vehicles. Then Marcel brings out the silver dress, this evening's armour, a beaded sheath from last season that the new trunks have not yet dethroned, and lifts it over your head, and it comes down your body, cold as rain. 8 pounds of glass beads clicking softly into place. It fits nowhere and everywhere, touching only the shoulders and the hips. A shimmering architecture that turns every small movement into weather. You take 1 step and the whole dress answers. The Charleston was invented, you are convinced, by a woman wearing exactly this, who simply let the dress vote. The face, next. And the evening face is a different country from the morning one. Powder, pale, rouge, higher and franker. The eyes ringed with kohl until they are twice their daytime size, lids shadowed faintly violet, lashes darkened with a little brush and a cake of mascara, spit and pigment, the great secret of every gleaming evening eye on the eastern seaboard. And the mouth, the signature of the age, drawn smaller than nature drew it, a deep carmine bow. The bee-stung lip of the magazine covers, applied with a tiny brush and total concentration. It is, you are perfectly aware, a mask, and that awareness is the modern part. Your grandmother was told her face was her character. You have been informed by Vogue that your face is your canvas. And you find, on the whole, the canvas theory more relaxing. The hair is pressed back into its waves, and then the jewels, and here the 20s rewrite the rules again, because the fashion now is not the dog collar and the stomacher, the upholstered look of the gilded queens, but line and geometry, the new style from Paris, all zigzags and sunbursts, diamonds set in platinum like frozen jazz, long earrings that graze the shoulder, bracelets stacked from wrist halfway to elbow, a glittering gauntlet on each arm, the long rope of pearls, doubled tonight, and across the forehead, the bandeau, a river of brilliance with a single white aigrette, the feather standing up like an exclamation mark the whole evening intends to earn. Last, the wrap, a great square of velvet, the colour of midnight with a fox collar, and the little beaded bag containing lipstick, powder, banknotes, and nothing else, because a modern evening travels light. Marcel circles once, tugs the hem a 1/4 inch, surveys her work from powder to shoe buckle, and delivers the highest praise in her national arsenal, a single small nod and the word correct. You stand before the long mirror, and the woman looking back is silver from throat to knee. eyes enormous, feather aloft, lit like a lamp. Downstairs, Walter is bellowing genially about the time. The Rolls is at the door with its lamps burning, and 40 miles west, the island of Manhattan is switching itself on for you. Avenue by avenue. Bonaparte denied the city on account of an incident at the plaza we do not discuss. Watches from the bed with the wounded dignity of a deposed king. You blow him a carmine kiss, take up your wrap, and go down the great stairs sounding, at every step, like sleigh bells committing a robbery. The run into the city at dusk is one of the secret pleasures of your life. 40-odd miles of falling light, with Collins silent at the wheel, and the whole evening still unspent, like a purse full of gold. Out the gates and down the shore road first, past the neighbour estates lighting their windows one by one behind the hedges, past the club with its porch lamps burning, through the village where the drugstore's soda fountain glows like an aquarium full of teenagers. Then the turnpike, and the island begins to change character mile by mile. Estates giving way to farms, farms to villages, villages to the raw new edges of the boroughs, street grids laid out in fresh concrete with houses sprouting in rows, little houses, thousands of them, marching toward you out of the potato fields. Walter reads this landscape the way he reads the tape. Every mile of it, he says, is being bought on Monday and sold on Friday. Half of Queens is a poker game with sidewalks, and he says it with the cheerful reverence of a man watching his own religion spread. You watch the other thing. The light. The long June dusk lying pink and green over the flats, the first electric signs standing up against it, gas stations like lit toys, a trolley swaying past full of men coming home from shifts, all of it flickering by the window in the smell of salt and gasoline, the particular perfume of the age, and then the bridge. However many 100 times you have made this crossing, the bridge does its work on you every single time. The car rises onto the great steel span. The river opens black and moving below with its ferries trailing wakes of light. And there it is, the island, Manhattan at dusk, a wall of towers with 10,000 windows coming alight at once, banked and stacked and climbing, with searchlights fingering the sky above the theatre district, and a glow over Midtown, like a bonfire made of electricity. There has never been anything like it on the earth. Not Rome, not Paris, not London. It is 7 miles of ambition stood on end and switched on, and it is barely half built. The papers full of towers racing each other into the sky, each one topping out with a flag and a photograph, and the whole skyline changing between your visits like a child you see only at holidays. Walter, beside you, watches it come with his hands folded, quiet for once, because this is his cathedral, the thing all the tickers tick toward. You watch it as a spectacle, the way you would watch a storm, magnificent, slightly frightening if you look too long, better with the window up. Then you are down and in it, and the city closes over the car like water. Fifth Avenue at 7, the double-deck buses lit like ships, the traffic tower blinking its coloured eyes, crowds pouring along the pavements in hats, everyone in hats, an ocean of hat brims flowing under the shop lights, and the sound arriving through the glass, horns, bells, a riveter somewhere still working high up in the last of the light, hammering the next tower together over the heads of the crowd. Collins threads the rolls through it all at a walking pace, imperturbable, past the department store windows burning like stage sets, past the library lions, up into the 50s where the awnings begin, each one with its brass poles and its doorman, each doorman knowing each car, and at the curb ahead, under an awning the colour of claret, the evening's first destination stands, waiting in white gloves. The door opens. The city hands you out of the car, sound and light and perfume all at once, the whole roaring hive of it. Dinner, madame, is at 8. The dining room of a grand Manhattan hotel at 8 o'clock in 1927 is the old world's last, best argument. And it knows it, and it has never looked more beautiful, the way things do when they are almost over. You enter on Walter's arm through an anteroom of mirrors, and the maître d'hôtel receives you by name with the bow he learned in Vienna, and conducts you down 3 steps into a sea of white linen and candlelight, past tables that are each a small lit stage, to your own, kept for you, in the corner that sees the room. This procession, 20 yards of carpet, is a public event. Eyes lift discreetly the whole way. In the 20s, you do not simply eat dinner, you perform arriving at it, and a woman in 8 pounds of beads learns to cross a dining room the way a ship crosses a harbour. Slowly, lit, and to general observation. The room itself hums like a well-fed engine. Palms, gilt, a fountain somewhere making genteel water noises, and a string orchestra on a balcony playing waltzes at exactly the volume of money. The crowd is the evening edition of your world printed in full. Railroad money and radio money, a table of Argentines who play polo, 2 sitting senators pretending not to see each other, an opera soprano in emeralds eating cutlets with terrifying efficiency, and near the fountain, unmistakable, a face from the moving pictures at which nobody stares, staring being provincial, while every person present monitors it continuously with the skin of their backs. Dinner unrolls in the grand hotel manner, French in language and lineage. 7 courses moving like slow surf. Caviar first, on ice shaped by someone with strong feelings. Then a clear golden consommé. Then sole in a sauce the colour of pale sunlight. Then noisettes of lamb, tiny and perfect, with vegetables carved into jewels. Then an ice to rest you. Then squab. Then a soufflé that arrives tall as a top hat with 2 waiters in attendance, as though it might attempt escape. Nobody finishes anything. Finishing is not the point. The point is the procession, the small ceremonies, the captain filleting the sole at the table with 2 spoons, and the focus of a surgeon, the sommelier pouring, from a bottle wrapped in a napkin, like a foundling, a champagne. The wine list does not acknowledge, and the bill will record as mineral water. The law stops, by ancient custom, at the doors of any dining room this well lit, and the talk flows over it all, table to table, in the Freemasonry of the room. Walter is hailed by a steel man, then by his broker Mr. Feeney, sleek tonight as an otter, who leans in with something about the motor merger that makes Walter's cigar glow like a signal lamp. The soprano sends a note across the room to the actress, observed by everyone. Contents never known. The whole transaction more satisfying than most operas. A banker's wife, you know, from charity boards, stops at your table in passing and delivers, in 90 seconds flat, and the guise of admiring your bracelets, the complete diplomatic history of the summer, who has cut whom at Newport, which engagement is off, which yacht was seen where with whose party aboard. You absorb it all with the trained smile of your profession. Tomorrow this intelligence will be currency at the club. Tonight it is simply the 7th course. By 10 the soufflés are ruins across the room, and the orchestra has slid from Strauss into something younger, with a saxophone in it. The hotel's polite acknowledgement that the evening has a 2nd act, and every soul under 50 in the room is already leaning toward it. Walter signs the bill without reading it, a gesture that still, after 7 years, gives the insurance man's daughter in you a private shiver. White gloves pull back your chair. The beads pour you upright. On the sidewalk the night has turned warm and electric. The rolls slides up, and Dottie, appearing from a taxi in a whirl of fringe exactly on schedule, takes your arm and announces the address of the 2nd act. First to Collins, then, delightedly, to the night at large. It is a number on West 52nd Street. It is a door that is not what it says it is. Curtain up. Between the soufflé and the theatre there occurs, by ancient and unwritten schedule, the ladies' withdrawal, and you should know that the powder room of a grand Manhattan hotel at 9:30 is not a convenience. It is an institution. It is the Senate cloakroom of your entire world, and more actual business is transacted here in 20 minutes than in the dining room in 3 hours. The room itself is built for the function, though the architects would never confess it. An outer chamber, all rose light and mirrors, with a row of little vanity tables like private altars, low chairs for conferring, a maid in grey presiding over pins, powder, thread, and smelling salts with the resourcefulness of a field hospital, and enough soft distance from the doors that nothing said here travels. The lighting alone is a masterpiece of diplomacy. Pink-shaded, angled, designed by someone who understood that a room where women repair their faces must first repair their confidence, and every woman who checks her reflection here is granted, briefly, the best possible verdict. And in this chamber, nightly, Parliament sits. Watch the procedure. 2 wives who spent dinner at separate tables, smiling past each other, now settle at adjacent mirrors, and in the neutral language of borrowed powder, open negotiations their husbands believe they themselves are conducting downtown. An engagement that has wobbled all season is, in 4 quiet sentences by the window, either mended or mercifully dissolved, the fiancé to be informed of the outcome later, at his convenience, as is customary. A young bride, new to the coast and visibly capsizing under the evening, is taken in hand by 2 veterans, her dress praised, her seating decoded, her chief tormentor's history summarized in 1 sentence of surgical charity, and she sails out 4 inches taller, permanently loyal. This is the room where reputations receive their second reading. Dinner proposes. The powder room disposes. Tonight's session is lively. The sopranos' emeralds are examined in exile, their owner having swept in trailing scent and grievance, and are pronounced, in the room's forgiving light, magnificent, and possibly paste, 2 findings the Parliament sees no need to reconcile. The actress's arrival downtown later is confirmed. The monkey's biography is enlarged. Kitty Vandermeer, encountered at the 3rd mirror, files her customary bulletin, and you trade her the princeling for the motor merger, at the standard rate of exchange. And the attendant, who has kept this chamber for 19 years and holds more privileged information than a confessor and a bank examiner combined, moves along the tables with pins and thread, repairing a hem here, a shoulder strap there, silent, sovereign, and tipped by the wise like royalty. Ask any woman on this coast which servant in New York they would least like to see write a memoir. There is one answer. You take your own 2 minutes at a mirror, the carmine renewed, the powder settled, the bandeau checked against the evening ahead, and around you, the room hums at its rose-lit business, alliances forming and lapsing in the scented air. And you think, not for the first time, that the men 2 rooms away, dividing railroads over brandy with such heavy satisfaction, have no faintest idea where the actual government of their world convenes. The mirrors know. The maid in grey knows. The Parliament adjourns, as it always adjourns, on the arrival of some hostess's summons, faces perfect, treaties sealed, and files back out into the male evening looking, to that evening's undying credit, as though it had merely been powdering its nose. And now the theatre. The curtain at the New Amsterdam waits for no Senate. But first, because Dottie has tickets, and Dottie with tickets is a force of nature, the theatre, the New Amsterdam on 42nd Street, and not just any bill. The Follies, Mr. Ziegfeld's own, the most famous entertainment in America, and the only place on earth where every stratum of the city agrees to sit in the same room and gasp at the same moment. The theatre itself is worth the ticket. An Art Nouveau jewel box, all peacock greens and climbing vines, and gilded proscenium, and your seats are a box at the side, which is to say, seats from which you watch the show and the house watches you, an arrangement everyone involved finds satisfactory. Below, the orchestra floor is a solid field of white shirt fronts and bare shoulders, tiara to tiara with cloche to cloche. Tired businessmen beside their wives, beside flappers beside, 3 rows back. A face you last saw at the hotel fountain. The Follies audience is the city's whole glittering crust in one pan. Then the house lights sink, the orchestra pit ignites, and Mr. Ziegfeld's machine begins, and machine is the word, the most expensive, most precise spectacle ever assembled on a stage. Comedians first. The great ones. Men who can hold 2,000 people in the palm of a pause, a fellow with a lariat and a slow grin drawling jokes about senators that will be quoted at every breakfast table on the island tomorrow, jokes at which Walter laughs, the honest laugh he otherwise reserves for the market doing something he predicted. Songs, new ones, minted here, that the whole country will be humming into its porridge by August. Sheet music racing out of the lobby by the armful. And between and around and above it all, the thing itself, the reason the word Follies means what it means, the girls. The Ziegfeld girls do not exactly dance, and they certainly do not hurry. They descend. Staircases of them, in costumes that each cost more than a schoolteacher's year, in headdresses of ostrich and rhinestone taller than the wearers, moving with a slow architectural serenity down flights of silver steps that seem to unfold from the ceiling, while the orchestra plays something with strings in it about beautiful girls being, on the whole, a good idea. It is preposterous. It is glorious. It is watched by the shirt fronts below in a silence you could balance a coin on. Every one of those girls, Dottie observes behind her program, is 19, from a town with 1 water tower, earns more than her father, and is receiving flowers this minute from at least one of the boxes across the way. And Dottie is correct on all counts. And 2 of the flowers senders are known to you socially, and one of them is going to be in a column by Thursday. At the interval, the lobby is a crush of everyone, and the evening's third act is negotiated over cigarettes. Parties are merging, addresses are exchanged. Dottie is conducting 3 conversations and holding 2 invitations like a card hand. Then the chimes, the second half, a finale involving the entire company, a staircase to apparent heaven, and enough rhinestones to signal ships. And the curtain falls on 2,000 people in a state of expensive delight, and rises again, and falls, and the applause goes on while the aisles are already filling, because this audience adores a finale but worships a next stop. Outside, 42nd Street at 11 is bright as noon and twice as awake. The electric signs running their news and their cigarettes and their chewing gum around and around. The sidewalks a slow river of silk hats and bare arms. Taxi doors slamming like applause. The Rolls waits in the rank with its lamps lit. Collins has, in the mysterious manner of chauffeurs, already heard the address on 52nd Street. Already knows the block. Already knows, though his face declines to say so, exactly what kind of door it is. The city tilts downtown. The night begins to syncopate. West 52nd Street, close to midnight, looks like nothing at all, and that is the entire idea. A row of brownstones, respectable and dim, arrowway railings, dark parlour windows, 1 street lamp doing its minimum, except that taxis keep arriving. They pull up, spill out silk and laughter, and the silk and laughter walk down 3 steps to a basement door and vanish, and the street swallows the evidence and resumes looking like an insurance office's dream. You descend the 3 steps. Dottie knocks, a small rhythm, nothing theatrical. Behind the iron grille a panel slides, 4 inches of warm light and 1 unimpressed eye. Dottie says a name. Not her own, the name changes weekly and travels the coast by telephone like a benediction. A pause, calibrated to remind everyone on both sides of the door how this works. Then the eye softens. The panel shuts. Bolts move, and the door of the ordinary brownstone opens into another dimension. Inside is small, low, golden, and completely alive. A room that held coal bins in its last life, now panelled, mirrored, packed shoulder to bare shoulder, wreathed in smoke and perfume, and vibrating floor, glassware and ribcage, to a 5-man band in the corner, playing hot jazz at conversational distance. A bar of polished mahogany runs the length of one wall, tended by 2 men in white coats with the composed speed of surgeons, and on it, in defiance of the Constitution of the United States, stands everything: the real scotch, the real champagne, the gin that has actually met a juniper berry, off the boats, from the fleet, at a markup that would blush a jeweller. And the drinks come, this is your favourite absurdity of the whole age, in teacups, porcelain teacups, with saucers, florals, the sort your grandmother collected. Champagne in a teacup. $16, roughly a workman's week. And, if the law comes through the door, why, officer, a tea party, and everyone will sip with a straight face, while the bar becomes a bookcase. Because the bar does become a bookcase, there is a mechanism. The barman demonstrated it once at 4 a.m. to general applause. Raids happen, rarely here. The envelope that visits the precinct monthly sees to that. But the theatre of readiness is maintained the way great houses maintain lightning rods, and half the thrill of the room, admit it, is drinking champagne from your grandmother's china at the edge of the law with a judge doing the same at the next table. Because look at the tables. That is a judge. That is a columnist. Feeding. That is a Wall Street name. Walter greets with 2 fingers, sharing a bottle with a man whose profession the room has agreed not to know. Their heads together in the fellowship of the age. Capital and contraband. And nobody anywhere else on earth could tell you which is which by looking. That is a chorus girl from the very staircase you applauded 2 hours ago, still in her stage lashes, drinking a genuine tea, resting her feet. And moving through it all, the hostess. Red-haired, loud as brass and twice as bright, greeting the crowd wholesale with an endearment that is her trademark and her fortune, kissing Dottie, assessing your beads in one frank professional flash, and steering your party to a table the size of a hat box as though conferring a duchy. Walter orders the scotch, the real one, tastes it, and gives the small nod of a man confirming a bank's soundness. Dottie is already gone, absorbed into the crowd like sugar into water. The band finishes one number and starts a hotter one without breathing. It is past midnight, illegal, deafening, delicious, and the trumpet has just stood up. We had better talk about the music. The music in this cellar is the newest sound on earth, and everyone in the room knows it, and that knowledge is half the intoxication. It came up from New Orleans by way of Chicago. It lives uptown in Harlem, where the great orchestras hold court at clubs, whose floor shows make the Follies look like a church picnic, and it has conquered, in half a decade, every dance floor, gramophone and radio set in the Western world. The bishops denounced it. The papers held symposiums on its dangers. Your mother's generation called it jungle music and predicted the end of civilization. Civilization, as is its habit, bought records instead. Up close, in a room this size, jazz is not a style, it is a weather. The 5 men in the corner, cornet, clarinet, piano, banjo, drums, are conducting a controlled storm, tossing the melody between them like jugglers, bending it, breaking it, reassembling it upside down, each man taking his turn to stand and go somewhere entirely his own while the others hold the ground under him. Nothing is played the same way twice. That is the scandal and the miracle of it. Every other music you were raised on was written down and obeyed. This music is invented in front of you, at speed, nightly, and the players' faces when it goes right, that inward listening shine is the face of men building the 20th century in real time, and the floor answers. The Charleston, currently detonating across 8 square feet of parquet, is less a dance than a happy emergency, knees knocking in and out, heels flying, arms crossing, beads hazarding themselves in all directions. Dottie is at the centre of it, naturally, teaching the princeling, who has materialized from some other party, uniform buttons flashing, dancing with the grave commitment of a man diffusing something. Around them the flappers move with a fast, glittering insolence their mothers never owned, and the men keep up or are cheerfully abandoned. Even Walter, 2 scotches deep and glowing, executes with you what he calls his foxtrot, a stately travelling embrace, unchanged since 1912, and you love him precisely for its total imperviousness to fashion. Between numbers, teacup courses, the champagne stands in its silver bucket, dressed as nothing whatsoever. Toasts occur. To the band, to Saturday, to the market, may she never come down. A toast Walter delivers standing. To laughter, and the small cold voice in the back of your head notes the phrasing and is again handed a biscuit. The hostess sweeps by and sits on the arm of Walter's chair for precisely 90 seconds, tells one story that cannot be repeated and will be repeated everywhere, and moves on trailing admiration like a wake. And you, in the middle of it, silver-beaded, teacup in hand, band roaring, feel the thing this decade does at its best, the thing all the columns and the moralists keep missing when they tot up its sins: joy. Plain, loud, unreasonable joy, a whole roomful of it at 1 in the morning, judges and chorus girls and bootleggers and wives, all briefly, genuinely. One nation under a cornet solo. It will not last. Nothing this shiny lasts. Some sober cell of you has always known that, but knowing is for Monday. It is Thursday night. Technically Friday. The clarinet has just done something that made the whole room shout, and your feet, in their silver shoes, have voted with the 20s. 1 more number. Perhaps 2. The lanterns of Saturday, the ledgers, the tide, all of it can wait on the far side of this ceiling of smoke and this floor of light. The band counts 4, and off you go again. It is somewhere past 1 when the room performs one of its quiet miracles of the age, and to understand it, you must first meet, properly, the woman who was not there, Mrs. Van Rensselaer, the old stone house across the cove from windward, the one with no peacocks, no marble pool, no lanterns, a house that has stood there, disapproving of the view, since before the Revolution. The family came down the Hudson when New York was New Amsterdam. There is a street named for them downtown, which they consider, on the whole, forward of the street. Mrs. Van Rensselaer is 81, wears grey silk in all seasons, is driven in a town car older than Collins, and has declined, in 7 years, 11 of your invitations. Each regret 2 lines, each on that paper. Paper so old and heavy, it arrives like a small tombstone with penmanship. To her, and to the thin, ancient stratum she commands, you and Walter are not rich, you are recent. Money, in her cosmology, is like wine or timber. It requires generations lying still in the dark to become itself. A fortune that can name the man who made it is still in trade, and the whole shining coast of towers and tapestries and imported abbeys is, in her fixed view, a carnival that wandered onto sacred ground and will, God willing, wander off again. She is not cruel about it. Cruelty would require noticing you individually. She simply declines, serenely, entirely, to concede that any of it has happened. And here is the joke history is telling at her expense, the joke visible from any table in this cellar at 1 in the morning. Her world is losing, not to argument, to arithmetic. The old fortunes, the land and lineage kind, sit in trusts earning their careful 4%, while Walter's kind doubles on the ticker and buys the ancestral Rembrandts at the estate sales. The old families retreat, cove by cove, selling meadows to men with blueprints, closing wings, pensioning butlers, while their sons, and this is the exquisite part, their own sons and granddaughters are here. Tonight, downtown, in this very smoke, dancing the Charleston with chorus girls and marrying, with increasing enthusiasm, exactly the new money their grandmothers cannot see. The princeling out there mangling the Charleston with Dotty is bluer of blood than anyone on this coast, and he would trade the whole uniform for Walter's brokerage account, and has said so, twice, charmingly, in front of witnesses, because the truth, the one you have watched operate for 7 years, is that in America the border between old money and new is not a wall, it is a waiting room. The formula is known to every hostess on the shore. The first generation makes it and is refused. The second generation is received, carefully, at the larger parties. The third generation is old money and refuses somebody else. The Van Rensselaers themselves, though it is worth your life to say it at the club, were fur traders once, which is to say bootleggers in beaver. Time launders everything. Peggy, asleep right now above the sound with her aeroplane drawings, will be, by the cold mathematics of it, quality. Her granddaughter will decline invitations on heavy paper and mean it. You hold no grudge against the old woman across the cove. Honestly, and it took you some years to locate this feeling, you hold something closer to fondness. In a world where everything, houses, titles, faces, pedigrees, is suddenly for sale, there is a bleak Roman grandeur in the one customer who will not buy. Every coast needs its lighthouse, Walter says, even one that only signals disapproval, and every so often from your terrace you see her lights across the water, 2 windows, oil yellow, early to bed, and you raise your contraband champagne a 1/4 inch in a toast she will never see and would never return. The cove between your houses is 300 yards wide and 100 years deep, and some evenings, in the right light, it is the most interesting body of water in America. Toward 2, at the foot of the cellar stairs, there is a small commotion of a very particular modern kind, a doorman's murmur, a ripple of turned heads, and then a burst of hard white light, and another, and the age's newest weather phenomenon has arrived indoors, the flashbulb. The photographers have come, 2 of them, tipped off by the hostess herself, who understands her business down to the molecule, because the actress has arrived. Monkeyless but magnificent, and where the actress goes the cameras follow, and where the cameras follow, the room arranges itself instantly and while pretending not to, into a composition. Watch it happen. Shirt fronts straighten. Profiles rotate 1/8 of a turn toward the light. Dotty materializes from the dance floor into the background of the shot with the unerring instinct of a homing pigeon, and the judge, interestingly, develops a sudden deep fascination with the pattern of the tablecloth. What is being manufactured in this basement, between the flash and the caption, is something genuinely new under the sun, and the columns have already coined its name: Café, Society, the old society. Mrs. Van Rensselaers was a fortress of private names, families who considered a newspaper mention, any mention, a form of undress. The new society is a stage. It is made of exactly this. Actresses and heiresses and polo men and wits, photographed nightly in exactly these cellars and supper clubs, printed at breakfast, and consumed by millions of readers who now follow the doings of cafe society the way they follow baseball, with box scores and favourites and villains. Fame, which for all of history required a throne, a battlefield, or a stage, can now be manufactured from attendance alone. There are people in this room, everyone can name 2, who are celebrated entirely for being celebrated, whose occupation, listed nowhere, is appearing, and it is a full-time occupation, 6 nights a week, and more taxing than honest work, and your world and this new world are dissolving into each other at speed. The columnists have learned that a Wall Street name beside an actress's doubles the caption's voltage. The hostesses have learned that a moving picture face at dinner does what a duke's did for their grandmothers. The old guard is scandalized, naturally, at names in print, at wives photographed laughing after midnight with teacups that fool no one, and the old guard's own children are in the pictures by Thursday. Walter regards the whole apparatus with the benign interest of a man watching a new industry find its feet, and he is right. It is an industry, the manufacture of glamour, and this decade is its Pittsburgh. The flash catches your table once, incidentally the actress in the foreground, you a silver blur beyond her shoulder, and Monday's caption will list among those present a certain Long Island hostess whose Saturday feat is the most anticipated of the season, which is Miss Vance's phrasing, planted Tuesday, harvested on schedule. You watch the photographers pack their plates and climb back into the night, carrying tomorrow's mythology in a leather case. And you think of the old albums at the stone house across the cove, generations of faces photographed once a decade, stiff, private, permanent. Two kinds of immortality. Theirs in leather, yours in newsprint, theirs lasting centuries and seen by no one. Yours lasting a day and seen by everyone. The age has chosen. The age, you reflect, finishing the teacup, was never really in doubt. Somewhere past 2, by the unwritten common law of married couples, a glance crosses the table between you and Walter, is ratified, and becomes a treaty. Dottie is staying, of course. The night for Dottie is a young country still. But for the House of Windward, the evening is complete. The hostess bestows farewell kisses and one last unrepeatable story. The doorman's panel slides, the brownstone releases you, and 52nd Street receives you back into the ordinary night as though nothing behind that door had ever happened. Which is, officially, the case. The city at 2:30 is a different instrument played softly. The great signs still burn over empty pavements, spelling their cigarettes and chewing gum to nobody. Steam stands up out of the manholes and leans with the breeze. A street-washing truck grinds by, trailing its wet fan of rainbow under the lamps, and the last taxis drift the avenues like fish in a tank. Collins brings the rolls around, unruffled, eternal, having spent the evening in the fellowship of chauffeurs at some curbside parliament whose proceedings no employer will ever learn, and tucks the lap robe over your knees, with the gravity of a man flagging a treasure ship for home. Walter is asleep before the bridge. This is his gift, and you have long since stopped resenting it. The whole roaring engine of him switching off between one lamppost and the next. Hat-tipped, breathing like the tide, the evening cigars and mergers and scotches all filed and forgotten. You are the wakeful one. You have always been the wakeful one. You ride with the window cracked an inch, the city air giving way mile by mile to salt and cut grass, watching the boroughs run backward through the glass, the lit grids thinning, the new little houses dark now in their fresh rows, dreaming their mortgages, then the farms, the black potato fields, the sleeping villages with one bulb burning over the firehouse door, and then the shore road and the stars. Out here, past the last street lamp, the sky reasserts its old majority, thick summer stars over the sound, and the great estates go by as darker masses against the dark. A gatepost, a wall, a glimpse of one lit window high up in somebody's tower where somebody's night is ending badly, or beginning well. The hedges breathe honeysuckle through the window gap. The tires hum their one soft chord. Bonaparte, with certainty, is awake on the bed at home, facing the door, on duty, absurd and faithful. You think, in the loose-threaded way of 3:30, about the whole spinning day of it, the grapefruit and the ticker, the beads and the bootlegger, the staircase full of rhinestones, the teacups, the flashbulbs, the old woman's 2 oil yellow windows across the cove. All of it happening at once, every day. On this one improbable shore, the whole gorgeous, precarious, brand new machine of it running at full throttle with the top down. It cannot go on forever. Even the almanac says so, somewhere in its back pages. But the night is warm. The road is empty. Your husband is snoring gently into his collar with 3 points of consolidated, still glowing in his dreams. and forever. Tonight feels like a problem for the daytime people. The gates, the long crunch of the drive. The house rises up against the stars with one lamp burning over the door. Lit for you, always lit for you, and the sea, invisible everywhere, saying the one word it says, patiently, all night long, to every fortune on this coast, old and new alike. Hush, hush, hush. The house takes you in with its night manners. One lamp in the hall, the great rooms standing dark and orderly, the marble cool through your stocking feet, because the silver shoes came off at the door, as they do, as they always do, dangling from 2 fingers, the evening's last surrender. Walter is steered, docile as a liner coming into dock, toward his own rooms, where his man will receive him, and the day's silk armor will be struck and hung, and you climb the great stairs slowly in a house so quiet you can hear the clocks negotiating. And there at your door, in a pool of soft light, is Marcel, in her wrapper, waiting up, because she always waits up, a fixed star in a spinning decade, and now the loveliest half hour of the whole loud day, the unbuilding. Marcel unhooks the bandeau and lifts away the aigrette, and your scalp exhales. The bracelets come off in chiming stacks, the doubled pearls over your head, the earrings, each piece into its velvet tray like instruments after surgery. Then the dress, 8 pounds of silver undone in one long whisper down your body, and stepping out of it, weightless, is a physical joy so absolute that you have wondered, privately, whether the whole point of beads is the taking off. Marcel bears it away over her arms, chiming faintly to its muslin bag, a small silver casualty carried from the field with honours. Then the dressing table, the low lamp and the reversal of the evening face. Cold cream, scooped cool from the white jar, worked over cheeks and eyes, and the mask of 2 o'clock dissolves onto squares of cotton, the carmine bow, the violet lids, the kohl, all of it wiped away in long practiced strokes, until what looks back from the mirror is nobody's hostess and nobody's caption, just a woman of 30 with sun on her nose from the pool and the faint parallel creases of a long day around her eyes. You have never minded this unveiling. Some of the women you know cannot pass a mirror barefaced without flinching. But you were an insurance man's daughter for 22 years before you were any of tonight's inventions, and it is frankly restful at 3:30 to see her still in there, keeping the books, the silk nightgown, the 100 strokes of the brush through the shingled bob. A ritual your mother performed on yard-long hair, and you have kept, at 1/5 the length, purely for the metronome comfort of it, Marcel counting under her breath in French the way she learned as a girl. The window stands open a hand's width on the sea air. Bonaparte, vindicated in his vigil, has performed his single vault and installed himself at the bed's foot like a small warm boulder, already asleep, one ear still technically on duty. Marcel gathers the last of the evening into her arms, stockings, gloves, the little beaded bag with its lipstick and its scandalous emptiness, pauses at the door, says "Good night, madame. Sleep well, madame," in the voice she will use at 8 tomorrow as though none of this night ever happened, and is gone, and the door clicks, and the lamp clicks, and the day, that enormous, glittering, 17-hour machine of a day, is finally, formally, put away. Listen now, as you settle into the pillows, to a Gold Coast mansion going to sleep around you, because a house this size never simply stops, it subsides, wing by wing, like a great animal folding its legs. Below you, the last duties are ending. Pemberton makes his final round. You can feel more than hear it. A presence moving through the dark rooms, checking window latches like a benevolent ghost, the cellar door, the silver vault, the front lamp left burning, and then his own door far off in the service wing, closing with the soft authority of a man who has put 2 continents' worth of houses to bed in his lifetime. The kitchen sleeps in ranks of copper. The ice machine mutters its cold arithmetic to itself in the basement. And up under the roof, in the long corridor of small rooms, the maids are long asleep with their alarm clocks set for 6. Their window boxes of geraniums breathing over the gravel 3 stories down. The stables are quiet, the horses breathing slow, the rolls ticking as it cools in the garage beside the little roadster, the day's 40 miles releasing from the metal. Down at the water, the tide is doing things to the pilings, patient, wooden, ancient sounds, and the yacht rides her mooring with her riding light burning, a single white star rocking gently on the black water. The lanterns for Saturday sit coiled in their crates in the stable block, 400 small moons waiting for their night. The peacocks, at last, have nothing to say. Along the coast, the whole improbable kingdom is doing the same. 600 estates settling under the same stars, ticker tapes sleeping in wastebaskets, beaded dresses hanging in muslin bags, teacups back in their pantries with perfectly straight faces, French maids and English butlers and Ohio millionaires, all breathing in the same slow tide. Across the cove, the 2 oil-yellow windows of the old stone house went dark hours ago, keeping their own counsel, as they have for 200 years, as they intend to for 200 more. Your body begins its subsiding. Feet, freed of silver, humming faintly with the Charleston still in them somewhere. Shoulders coming down by degrees from the day's long performance. The sea air moves through the window gap, and the room smells of cold cream and salt and, faintly, from somewhere in the fabric of the night, honeysuckle. Peggy is asleep 2 doors down with an aeroplane drawing on her night table. Walter is asleep across the passage, dreaming in ticker tape, his snore arriving through 2 closed doors like distant, contented industry. Bonaparte twitches once, in pursuit of some dream Vanderbilt, and settles. And the last thing, as sleep comes up around you like a tide, is the sound. The one the whole day was too loud to hear. The sound itself, out beyond the lawn in the dark, laying its long, slow waves against your shore, one after another, unhurried, unimpressed, uncounting, the way it did before the houses came, the way it will after. Hush, it says, to the ticker and the teacups and the lanterns in their crates. Hush, to the columns and the cameras. Hush, now, hush. So tonight, as you lie in your own bed, in your own century, with no bootlegger's truck expected and no 300 guests inbound, spare a soft last thought for them, the filthy rich of the roaring years, the insurance man's daughter in her silver beads, wide awake on the shore road under the stars, Walter and his beloved ticker, printing its endless optimistic ribbon into a basket in a dark study, Marcel counting brushstrokes in French, Pemberton latching windows, Dottie still dancing somewhere below 52nd Street with 3 proposals in the icebox, and a small white dog on guard at the foot of a bed, holding the whole gorgeous carnival together with sheer force of opinion. It was a shining, breathless, impossible way to live, and it was already borrowing against a bill that history had every intention of presenting. The music had perhaps 2 more summers in it. The lanterns, the columns, the teacups, the whole electric carnival was dancing on the thinnest ice of the century, and almost nobody looked down. But that is a morning truth. And tonight we are keeping evening hours. Tonight the band is still playing, the tide is still patient, and every light along that lost gold shore is still burning. You have no beads to take off, no mask to dissolve. Nobody is photographing you, which, take it from the caption writers, is the deepest luxury on the market. Whatever your day held, its machinery is switched off now, fully off, and this quiet, this ordinary, unglittering, sufficient quiet is something all the tickers of that decade could never buy back once it was spent. So let the party recede down the lawn. Let the lanterns go out one by one over the water. Let the last motorcar crunch away down the gravel, and the last teacup find its shelf. And the great house fold itself down into the dark, wing by wing, until only the sea is awake, saying the one old word it says to every shore and every century.